The spreadsheet comparison tool allows you to compare similar spreadsheets for differences in inputs or formula, and it can save you time where you would normally have to redo the review. Here we have a spreadsheet that we believe is correct, and let's pretend that it's been sent out to someone and later they sent back the same spreadsheet where they admit they made some changes but they're not sure what they were. It would be very useful if we could, in a quick and easy way, understand where the changes have been made. We could of course just do it manually. So we look here and we see that those look okay, these look roughly okay, there seems to be something new here, and just looking at the answers you'll see in this spreadsheet the profit after tax is 31,500, whereas here it's 7,000. So we can do it manually, but there is a better way to do it using spreadsheet comparison from the Spreadsheet Professional toolbar. To use the comparison tool, you go to Spreadsheet Professional's toolbar and you click on Use, and you'll see here there's Spreadsheet Comparison Tool, and you activate it. And what you'll do now is you're asked to identify the first spreadsheet you want to look at and the second spreadsheet, and where possible to actually specify the sheets that need to be compared. So in this case the spreadsheet name is Comparison Presentation. The second spreadsheet in this case is actually the same spreadsheet. In other instances you may have other spreadsheets. We can compare all sheets by clicking on each section, but in this case I want to compare something called Example Adjustment to Example. You also need to specify what you want to show the differences in, and you can see here the choices are the differences in inputs, in formulas and results. In most cases I find that using inputs and formulas is more than sufficient. So once you've identified all of this, you click OK. The following report will be generated. As you can see, a separate report is generated which specifies the differences found. You'll see there's a sheet for the formula differences and a sheet for the input differences. So for the formula differences, it will specify the cell, tell you what the formula looked like in the one spreadsheet, and then show you what the formula looks like in the other spreadsheet, and provide all that listing. So that's for the formulas. And if you clicked on the inputs, you'll see it will specify where the inputs have differed. Before we understand how to use these reports, why don't you try and use the tool yourself? Now let's compare these two spreadsheets by using the comparison tool. So I activate it, I specify which spreadsheets to look at and which sheets. I make sure I've got the differences shown as in inputs and formulas, and when I click OK, the report runs. For ease of use, I'm just going to try and put all the spreadsheets on the same sheet so we can watch the impact on all sheets as we go along. So let's look at the first difference identified. It tells us that in cell I13 our original spreadsheet had this formula and the new spreadsheet has this formula. So if we go to I13 and we see where it is looking, you'll see it takes the prior year and then adds inflation on of 5%. If we go here now to I13, we discover that the formula has been changed to reflect taking the prior year, but instead of using 5%, it's now using the 7% up here. So we're just going to highlight it as something that needs to be questioned. We can also mark off here that we've looked at that instance. Now we move to the next one. It tells us F18 had this formula. In the new spreadsheet you'll see the formulas are almost the same except there's plus 35,000 here. So let's go here to F18. You'll see it's 140,000. There's the formula looking there. Over here in F18, same formula looking there, but for whatever reason a plus 35,000 has been inserted, which we need to investigate and understand why that has been done. And again, we can come here and mark off what we've looked at. The next one we see is J18. So if we go to J18, you'll see over here, it's basically looking at the 30% and the revenue line. And when we go to J18 here, we'll see that for whatever reason, it's looking backwards now to the prior year. So again, this is something that should be investigated, needs to be understood. In this case, it does look potentially like an error. And again, we can just show that we have looked at this. Moving on, we can go down and look at the rest of the problems found. In R20, if we go to R20 over here, you'll see that's operating expenses. When we look at what it's doing, you'll see it involves the revenue line, the operating expense line, and the marketing percentage. If we go to R20 here, you'll see again, for whatever reason, it's now moving 1 year forward and using that year's operating expenses. So I'm just going to mark that again and just clear all this. And again, identify that we've looked at it. For the last of the formula differences, we can see that J20 has a formula in this spreadsheet, but in this spreadsheet seems to have a number. So going to J20 here, you'll see we have a formula here. When we go to J20 in the second spreadsheet, you'll see the formula has been typed over with a set number, and that can pose a problem. So I'll just do that and get everything back to normal. We can now look where there have been differences in inputs. So if we click on that sheet, you'll see it's the same setup. We're told in E3 on this spreadsheet there's a 0.3. So in E3 here there's a 30%. However, in the second spreadsheet, even though it looks like it's 30% there, when you click on it and the calculations will use 29.5%. So we'd want to know why that change has occurred. And again, just noting everything we've looked at. The next input difference looks similar. So in E6, you'll see in the original spreadsheet it was 0.05 or 5%. So you'll see that here. And in the new spreadsheet, it's 0.045. So again, you see 5% there because of the formatting, but it's actually 4.5%. So we need to find out why that is the case. Again, we can say we've looked at that. If we look at R6, it tells us in the one spreadsheet there's nothing. In the other spreadsheet, there's a 7%. So we need to understand why that has been put there. And from our previous work, we'll know that it's been used in this cell, and those two are connected. So again, we just highlight that. Just continue, and you'll see there's one more where J20, it again specifies that here there was a formula, whereas in the new spreadsheet there's a hard-coded number, and we've already identified this one on the formulas example. We can just note that we have done it. We now have, in a very quick and thorough way, identified all the cells in this spreadsheet that have been changed, either at input level or at formula level. We can now investigate with the person who've made the changes whether these are appropriate or whether they were mistakes. Previously, we looked at a situation where we compared two spreadsheets that were very similar structurally. So you can see that these all tie up, and the only differences we identified were at the input and formula level. However, what do you do when you've got two spreadsheets which are similar, but you can see that for whatever reason some additional columns or rows have been added? If we run the comparison tool in this situation, we say OK, you'll see suddenly there are a significant number of differences. similar at the input level. But what you'll see as well is that a large number of these differences are actually due to blank cells. So for example, we are told that F17 over here doesn't exist over here. But just by looking down, we can see that all that's happened is that the line has moved one down. So the question is, how can you adapt the spreadsheets so that the comparison tool can do a true comparison? In this situation, we need to make these two spreadsheets look the same so that the comparison tool can compare formula for formula. Now the way you do this is you make insertions of rows or columns in the appropriate places. I repeat, you make insertions. You never ever make a deletion in the spreadsheets. The way I check to see if there's any structural changes in a spreadsheet is I generally open them up and I'll look at the very last row in the original spreadsheet. In this case it's row 23, and then compare it to the new spreadsheet, and I'll see that the same row, profit after tax, is now in row 27. So then I'll go halfway up, let's say to row 12, and I'll see that calculations is sitting on the same row as the new spreadsheet, calculations. If I move a bit down, row 16, the income statement is the same here. And then I'll see that total revenue, which on the original spreadsheet was in row 17, has been moved down to 18. And what you can now do is you insert a row so that these two are now on the same row. And just to make it clear that you have made that insertion, I generally highlight that row. Following the same process, we'll see now that total revenue are lined up and cost of sales are lined up. However, again, there's another row difference here. So gross profit is sitting on row 21. So I'll come here, insert a line and highlight it. So now those two line up, and we seem to have another gap here. So we insert it there and we highlight it. And again, row 26, we need to insert another one. You can highlight it. And now looking at the spreadsheets, we can see that they are lined up. Now that the spreadsheets have the same structure, we can now run the comparison tool. Check that we're looking at inputs and formulas, run it. And you'll see that we no longer have a long list of differences, but only the true differences are identified. And the process from here on in is exactly the same as in the normal comparison testing.